Deadlock really is for everyone. Hey everyone, this is Connor here at Dead Unlocked, and today I want to make the case that one of the reasons why Deadlock is so successful right now, and why so many people, including me, have been singing its praises as kind of like this next big thing in gaming, is because of the transferable skills it allows players to bring over from all sorts of different games. So today I want to go kind of genre by genre, mentioning specific games within each one, and talk about what I think you can transfer over from those games into Deadlock, and why Deadlock rewards all of these different kinds of players and provides this really unique gameplay loop that people are so addicted to. Let's get right into it. I want to start with the genre I have by far the most experience in, and that is hero shooters. In particular, Overwatch. I worked as a full-time journalist covering the Overwatch League and Overwatch esports from 2018 to 2021, and I've been very connected with the game for a long time. I have a Winston tattoo on my arm. Like, I love Overwatch. And I think that hero shooter players, whether it's Marvel Rivals or Overwatch or a TF2 player, can come to Deadlock with so many skills already intact. You're already going to be really accustomed to the idea of Deadlock's heroes and kind of how you fit into a game of Deadlock in terms of your role. You'll have an idea probably whether you're more of a frontliner, a backliner, a mid-range DPS, a spirit nuker, or whatever, right? You're going to have a lot of those skills already in your tool belt, and you're going to feel really good in Deadlock. You're probably going to love a game mode like Street Brawl where you can just get in and team fight all the time. Where I think these players are going to be stretched though, and where I think that Deadlock actually fulfills an important role is in the macro and in the itemization and the additional facets that go into winning a game of Deadlock that aren't really as present in a hero shooter. And I think this is so important because it feels like, to me at least, as a player with thousands of hours in Overwatch, it felt like it got to a point where the skill expression just wasn't enough. Like there wasn't an ability enough to outskill my opponent because the game has like a somewhat simplistic idea to it. Like, it's a balanced game, it's a constant tug of war, and the way you win that game is by winning team fights, and the objectives sometimes feel a little bit secondary to that. Like, the objective usually just determines where you take the team fight in a hero shooter, right? But in Deadlock, there's so much more going on, and it really allowed me as a hero shooter player to like expand my mind and start to like try to gap my opponents in different ways, and it felt really rewarding when I was able to do so. And I felt pretty comfortable coming over with my gameplay experience being a longtime Overwatch player. So again, I think this is an obvious one. I feel like a lot of hero shooter players are going to love Deadlock because it kind of allows them to take a next step in terms of strategy and again, how you can show your skill expression in the game. And it's just new elements that are going to feel new and fresh to you. So, while still feeling, I think, enough like a hero shooter in Deadlock. Next, I want to talk about all of the FGC players that I've seen coming to Deadlock. This one is actually kind of wild, and this is one of the things that I really appreciate about Deadlock is the parrying system. Like, there is a mechanic baked into this game where, regardless of what else is happening in the game, you can skill check someone at any point in the game if you time a parry against a heavy melee or a light melee, right? And it's that kind of thing that FGC players love. Like, whether you're a platformer player on like, Super Smash Bros. Or Rivals of Aether, or you're a more traditional fighter like Guilty Gear or Street Brawl or something, or not Street Brawl, Street Fighter, like whatever kind of FGC player you are, there are direct moments in those games where you're just rewarded with mechanical superiority and skill checks, and there's kind of like these jukes and these fakes involved. And the melee and in-close fighting of Deadlock is really similar to that. Like, especially if you're playing a hero like Billy or Abrams, who meleeing is a really essential part of their kit. Like, Abrams, getting the tier 2 shoulder charge gets him a heavy melee. It's a really core mechanic for that hero. Billy, obviously, the same way with reloading with light melees and heavy melees. So, meleeing in general and the parrying system, I think, is something FGC players are going to love. And then you get to, in the same way that hero shooter players are kind of going to be challenged to expand their horizons, I think you're going to have to obviously learn a lot of new principles coming over to Deadlock about macro and larger team fighting and how a role maybe impacts your positioning. Like, a lot of FGC players are probably just going to want to be in there scrapping all the time, taking every fight they can and just dominating. And you're probably going to be pretty successful in those, but it is kind of, a challenge to approach the game in a more broad scope. I'd be really curious in particular what FGC communities are coming over to Deadlock. I have a ton of love for FGC personally. Like, I grew up doing like Smash Melee tournaments at like Hastings and Toys R Us growing up, really dating myself there, like when I was in like elementary school and middle school. And then I've helped run like an FGC tournament here in Oklahoma City in the last year, and I just love the community a lot. It's one I feel like is like some of the best parts of gaming really wrapped into one community, and I also feel like is kind of the same kindred, goofy kind of community that Deadlock is, at least in some ways. So anyway, FGC players, glad you're here. Very curious where you're coming from. I think one of the most obvious other player bases that will come to Deadlock are just MOBA players in general. So probably players coming primarily from Dota 2 or League of Legends. And this is one that I can't speak as much from personal experience from. I've not been a huge player of those games, but I have worked as a collegiate esports director for a few years now, and I've had a League of Legends team the whole time. And so I've watched a ton of League, and I've played some with my students. But in general, though, I feel like players coming over from League or Dota are immediately going to have probably the most important skill set coming to Deadlock, and that is a general understanding of macro, trading resources, when to go for certain things, how to rotate across the map. Like, jungle pathing in Deadlock is a lot simpler than it is in like League of Legends, for example, right? So players should feel even more comfortable in that way. They're just going to have to get used to some of the hero shooter elements. It's kind of the yin and the yang of the player bases coming over, where one understands team fighting and one really understands macro more. And there certainly is team fighting in MOBAs, but it is usually from that top-down perspective. And so a third-person hero, a third-person team fight rather, is a totally different beast. So I think those players are going to have to work on their team fighting. But again, that's why a mode like Street Brawl, this feels like a Street Brawl commercial, but it's why a mode like Street Brawl exists. It's so good for new players. Just go play Street Brawl, seriously. I really love it. But anyway, again, MOBA players, though, I think especially a leg up that you're going to have is you're going to understand itemization as well. So use your strengths, outbrain your opponents early on in Deadlock, and just work on your team fighting mechanics. You'll be just fine. Next, I want to talk to the aimers out there, the tac shooter players that have come over to Deadlock, in particular probably from like Valorant or CSGO. I think these players are obviously going to come in with a certain mechanical giftedness where they're going to be very used to aiming, are going to be drawn to like these aimer heroes like Vindicta or Venator, or any of the gun heroes really in the game are going to be rewarding for a tac shooter player. But I also think the way you have to rotate around the map in MOBAs, and in particular in Deadlock, is going to reward these players as well. There's so much of a tac shooter is how you rotate around the map, and how, especially on the defensive side, where you position yourself. And Deadlock is so much the same way, where you have to be forward thinking and you have to be creative with how you get around the map, because at any point someone could turn a corner and you could get, and obviously a game like Valorant or CS, you could get killed immediately. Deadlock maybe not so much, but still, these things are going to transfer over. My background in these games, though, really comes from Valorant. I was actually a part of one of the first ever Valorant orgs that got started back in an event called First Strike, and I think it was 2020. I had an org that ran for about a year called Equinox that I was a part of the management team for. And it's also been a game that I've played off and on since then. We have it at the university I work at, so it's a really fun kind of game to compare to Deadlock, because they are so different. Certainly the way they're played and the optics of them are different, or the impetus is so much more on gunplay, obviously, in attack shooter. But so much of the larger game sense principles really do feel like they come over to Deadlock in a really cool way. All right, next I want to throw it back all the way to like my earliest esports roots, and that's in Pokemon VGC. I want to talk about turn-based strategy in general, but I was a Pokemon VGC player back in 2010, qualified for nationals actually at like the 2010 Dallas Regional, so that was super cool. I was a 16-year-old, and I shaved my head and like we went bald as Giovanni, and my friends were Team Rocket. It was super dope. Anyway, turn-based strategy lovers, though, and in particular Pokemon VGC lovers, I think people who are drawn to this genre obviously are just big brain gamers. They like to strategize, they like to think. But I think in particular with Pokemon VGC, so much of what is rewarding in that game's skill expression is counterplay. It's kind of like playing chess. I would classify chess in this kind of category as well, but you are actively trying to figure out what the opponent is trying to do and how what you can do can stop them, whether that's itemization or your build or where you're going across the map in Deadlock. And I think Pokemon VGC players will resonate with that. Are you trying to protect this turn? Like, are you trying to get value? What's the tempo of the game? Like, all of these things usually come into play in strategy games. And I'm also including, again, games like Civ, or I even play a lot of like Manor Lords, like Frostpunk, games like that. Like, again, just strategy games in general. I think those players really can enjoy Deadlock. It's certainly going to feel more fast-paced than those games, like, in Pokemon or any of those games. Really, you have quite a bit of time to make your decisions. And we're going to talk about RTS later, but RTS players are going to be a little bit more familiar with like the snappy decision making. But if you can get used to that, you're going to already be equipped with a lot of the counterplay and a lot of the good ideas about value trading that I feel like you're gonna thrive in Deadlock. So again, my strategy players, big brain gamers, even if you're just a board game lover and you're like a Scythe player or Terraforming Mars, or I don't know, Smash Up, like something like that, even like a deck builder, I think all of you can find a place in Deadlock and you're going to love its complexity. I even got into like some, you know, let's say you're like a TCG player even, you're going to love reading the text on all the items. You're going to be an item wizard by the time you get into Deadlock. So again, strategy players, I think you'll enjoy Deadlock. These are games I've played for a long time and really love, and I love Deadlock, so I feel like there's some connection. And I'll go ahead and mention RTS games because I was just talking about them. I think Age of Empires was one of the first games I ever played, like one of the first games I ever was interested in. It was like a Windows 98 PC or something. I was running Age of Empires on it. It was sick. I never got into StarCraft or any games like that, but those games feel a lot like Deadlock for some reason. I don't know why. I think it's the fact that there's just so much going on the map. And this could just be a similarity between MOBAs and RTS games, and I recognize that. But I think RTS players will really thrive in Deadlock for some of the stuff I just mentioned. You're going to be used to quick decision making. You're going to be very used to checking the mini-map and knowing what's going on across the map, and that's going to feel rewarding. So I feel like in general, again, RTS players, I feel like there's just enough similarities with this. The difficult thing is going to be getting used to the mechanics and obviously the team fighting, hitting your shots, those kinds of things. But, you know, if you're playing a hero that doesn't require much aim, you know, maybe you're a Graves player. Maybe you find ways to get a ton of value out of the map and you get used to rotating, maybe like a Mirage to rotate quickly. But again, I think RTS players will love Deadlock. Again, I'm OG Age of Empires player and I really do love this game. I only know this genre casually through playing Arc Raiders, but I think extraction shooter players are going to really thrive in Deadlock as well. In particular, I think a core component of extraction shooters is you have to know kind of when to cut your losses and run, or when to all in a situation. And that is one of the biggest follies of new Deadlock players, is just constantly running after a fight that they should not be engaging into. Like it's just not worth them going in to defend a Guardian when it's already just about dead. They should just go somewhere else and kind of cut their team's losses and get value elsewhere. That's something I feel like extraction shooter players are going to be naturally good at. Like you're constantly making those value judgments in a game like Arc Raiders, and I think certainly in a game like Marathon will be the same. So I think you will find a place in Deadlock. Again, the genre is so new and I have such a casual relationship to it that I don't want to say too much more here, but it just seems like those players are going to have a pretty keen sense of, you know, these value trades that are so often a part of Deadlock. And in particular, they're going to be good at cutting out and getting their loot, or getting their, you know, getting to the shop when they need to. So it's just a skill that I think those players will be able to expand on in Deadlock. To my loot fiends out there, maybe you're a Diablo 4 player, maybe you're a Destiny 2 player, the players out there that just want some good loot, I think Street Brawl is going to be like the thing for you. It's going to be like crack cocaine for you whenever you max roll a hero and you absolutely just roll, you get an enhanced eternal gift, and you're just a god by the end of the run. You're going to feel just like you do in Diablo 4 or Destiny 2 or whatever game it is when you have every piece of gear maxed, and it's going to scratch that same itch. I've played these games for a long time. It's an amazing feeling. I'm drawn back to the games. And Deadlock doesn't necessarily have a lot of RNG in the main game, like, so it's not as much of a component. And not that RNG is the sole proprietor of those games by any means, but Street Brawl is this really fun experience where you do get to roll, you get to min or max roll, like you have these kind of cool elements to it, where it does feel like a little bit like a slot machine. And that's just a part of the fun of those games, a part of the fun of the genre. I still think though, whether it's, again, Diablo 4 or a Diablo kind of game, or a game like Destiny, I do think those skills will transfer over and you'll grow to love a game like Deadlock. In particular, like the itemization is really, really cool. And when you get into a game and you play a game of Deadlock the right way, a normal game of Deadlock the right way, and you get the experience of like perfecting your build, and maybe you're a carry and you're up on souls and you're just shredding people, it is like this really cool, rewarding feeling that like you've achieved something, you've done what the game wanted you to do, you've outskilled your opponents, and now you're just winning. And it's a really kind of rewarding feeling, especially if you're a PvP player in either of those games. You're probably really going to love Deadlock. So I've played those games for a long time, love me some good loot, and I love Deadlock. The last one is a genre I want to speak to broadly, but I'm really talking about one game, and this is the BR genre. So if you're a Battle Royale player, I think you're going to love Deadlock. But honestly, if you're an Apex Legends player, I think you're really going to love Deadlock because of the movement. I think there's no better comparison to Deadlock's movement than Apex Legends. It feels so fluid, and Apex feels like one of those games where, like, in the BR community, it feels like there's a good understanding that is just like the best BR. It's at least one of the most rewarding in terms of like its skill expression and stuff. That could be a wrong take, I'm not sure. I've only played these games casually, but it feels like the movement in Apex is so much like Deadlock, and the way you're able to get in and out of these crazy fights in Apex by just pure movement is so similar to like when you're Mina or you're just some other character like Pocket that can just get out of a crazy situation that they shouldn't be able to escape from, and then you are able to get some benefit from that. Like it's such a rewarding feeling, and I think you're gonna love Deadlock because of it. Other games like Fortnite still require movement as well, and like there is that same kind of like brawling aspect that I think will feel rewarded in Deadlock. It's just a different enough game. But in any case, at least with Fortnite, you're playing third person, you're going to be used to that perspective. There are some other, valuable parts of that as well. But in general, I feel like BR gamers are going to love Deadlock. You're used to kind of the duration, longer games in those modes can go upwards of like 20 or 30 minutes, I feel like. So you're going to be used to the duration, you're going to be used to a lot of the game flow, and especially you're going to be used to the movement. Overall, it just feels like in gaming right now that it's so competitive, especially when you attach the term hero shooter to any game. It just feels like it's one of a million. And I think Deadlock has really achieved something different than a lot of its competitors because of the transferable skills that can come into it from other titles. This list I gave was not exhaustive. There's probably other genres and other games in particular that I didn't mention that I definitely should have. I just didn't want to speak, again, speculatively outside of my own experiences. So I really feel like the ones I've gone through, though, I feel like those players really can love Deadlock. And that's so much of why I think this game is going to be the next big thing. But at the end of the day, definitely let me know your thoughts. Are you a gamer from another genre I didn't mention? I'd be super curious to hear why and what you love about Deadlock. So, as always, thank you all so much for tuning in. From our house to yours, we'll see you all next time here at Dead Unlocked.